Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Universal Dialect Show. I'm your host, Chris Cypher73 Cabrera, and I have a fantastic guest on here. His name is David Sidoti. Okay. Now, this is where I get a little bit confused because on one show, you were under the Independent Bigfoot Research Group, but you're also under the the ISRTUSA.com. So can you differentiate that? Can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, they're one of the same, actually. Okay. It's the Independent Sasquatch Research Team. That's why I created that in 2000. I was on a larger group back in the day when I first started doing this, and then in 2000, I just went my own way, and so I developed created the team, the Independent Sasquatch Research Team, and that was back in 2000. So it's been quite a while, man. It's been a ride. It's been a journey. Yeah, I'll tell you that.
I would imagine. Well, David, I was talking to you earlier, and I told you that I listened to you on this show called Sasquatch Odyssey.
Yes.
And it's very compelling because I live in Florida. Been to Florida. I'm a transplant from New York City, but I mean, realistically, I've been here long enough that it's in my blood. Oh, okay. I'm a Mets fan. But
okay.
It's all New York to me.
It's all New York, yeah.
Anyway, you were saying some really incredible things.
Oh yeah, man.
Can you go into the origin of like, were you born and raised in Florida, and your intro into the subject of Sasquatch or anything paranormal?
I was originally born in Connecticut. My parents lived in Milford, Connecticut, and of course, like most northern folks, they got tired of the snow, man. And my dad got tired of shoveling snow to get in and get out, you know. So, and when I was at the age of 2, they moved down to Florida. And ever since then, that's between Florida, North Carolina, and just different parts of Florida is where we lived at, but mostly in Florida. Of course, they lived there in Connecticut most of their lives. Got down here, and the different places we lived here in Florida. We were in areas where there was lots of forest areas. Ocala was really close to us, so. The area that we lived north of Ocala National Forest. So even there was lots of woods and forests and stuff. So being kids, man, we were just like back in those days, we were outside all the time playing, running around, building forts, just running around through the woods, having fun and exploring.
Right.
Yeah, finding all kinds of cool stuff to mess around with in the woods, and you don't see a whole lot of that, kids doing that today. But it was just a shame because it's fun. But we also lived in North Carolina for a while, and we did the same thing up there. The only difference up there was there was mountains, of course.
Right. What part of North Carolina?
It was Brevard, North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah. So. So a lot of national parks up around there in that area. But for the most part, man, it's just like, anywhere else. There was lots of forests for us to go run around, cool creeks to play in, and just go out for hours and hours all day and just check out the areas.
Right. Get in touch with nature,
Right. And it wasn't until, I'll try to condense this down. It wasn't until
that's fine. The story is all about you, David. It's all about you, bro.
I was 7 years old. Me and my brother. My brother's he's a year older than me, and we were the closest two brothers because I'm the last of 6 in the family. And we were watching the show called In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. That's way back. But we saw what intrigued me was the show that was on that night was talking about Bigfoot and the Patterson Gimlin film, which I didn't know who these people were or what have you. All I can tell you what I remember of that is seeing this creature walk across this creek bed into the forest line. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I said, and always in my mind, I was like, man, wouldn't that be cool if we ran across something like that, or something like that was actually real out there. So that always kind of stuck in the back of my mind as a kid. Of course, growing up, things go to the wayside, and you don't think about these kind of things until later in life, which then happened in 1995 when I started getting into the computer field industry, and actually got my own computer at that time,
Right.
and doing schoolwork and so forth. I did just for giggles, sitting there one night bored, and I said, I'm going to pop in here and see what I can search online under Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and found a bunch of information out there. And I actually found people that were actually going out and looking for these things.
Right.
And it was just like a fire, man. It just lit under my butt and said, oh man. So I started digging in more and doing a lot of armchair research for it was 3 years, I think it was.
Right.
two and a half to 3 years, and because I wanted to learn more. I was intrigued, and I was like, hey, I remember this, Patterson Gimlin film, watching that as a kid. Now, looking at these, and then there was more video out there that I didn't even know, and that intrigued me even more so. So it just kind of built from there, and I started what I started doing, and
so David, before you get into that, what videos, what other videos are you talking about?
Just different types of clips and videos of
online stuff that people
possible online stuff that possible Sasquatch, this
right.
is
I got you.
A video of a Sasquatch, but some of them were kind of like blob squatches,
right. But, well, the Patty, I don't know if you're aware of this, the Patterson Gimlin film that was shown on In Search Of, that episode aired in 1977.
Yeah.
And I remember in 1980 seeing that. And that had the same thought as you, like, wow, it would be crazy to run into something like that,
Yeah.
But,
and then later on in life, I'll tell, well, actually back in 2018, I'll tell you about that, but yeah.
Continue with your thought.
No worries. Yeah. But so what I did is, I didn't know what researching was back then as far as that goes. And what it was is what I was exactly doing. I was like looking up information, cross-referencing stuff, reading more books on the subject. Actually, Diane Stocking, she was, I met her from the BFRO. She kind of gave me a lot of literature to catch up on, because she was a curator for BFRO back in the day there.
Right.
And that kind of helped me get my start into a lot of things, along with my own research that I was doing. I would stay up to like 2:00 in the morning, probably starting, after dinner at night, and then stay on the computer and just reading reports after reports after reports across the country in different parts of the world. And as I was doing that, as it's like kind of like reading a book, and then when how I can explain it is like you read a storyline in a book, and some of these storylines kind of seem very similar. So what I was picking up is patterns of these creatures in different parts of our country and different parts of the world that they were doing, like their eating habits, their living area habits, just those kind of, I wouldn't say oddities, it'd be oddities to us, but it would be like, if you think of it now as how someone or something would have to live off the land.
Right.
So these creatures, were doing pretty much had the basic skills and doing this basic things across the country. So these were patterns that you were picking up, and I was picking up when I was reading these reports. Now it's not like listening to podcasts back then, because they didn't have those. Which would be awesome, because that they've got a lot of reading, but but it also one of the patterns that I realized that these things were having, these things would stay in areas wherever the food source was at. There's a good food source or water source, or and shelter, of course. So those are the three basic things. And if you got into survival training and all that, that's one of the three basic things: food, water, and shelter. So these things were, they were living by it, like a rule.
Right.
So, we take it for granted, some things in life, but these things, they're having to do it every day and live that life all the time. Whereas we're kind of lax and, don't have to worry about it, because we have everything at our fingertips really easily.
Right.
So these patterns just started picking up, and they're not so different. But I did over the years, heard a lot of things, especially here in Florida, that the skunk ape is different than the ones out west and in Pacific Northwest. So
why do you think that is? Like, where do you think that started from?
I think just because of hearsay, maybe some eyewitnesses, and maybe some conjecture, that kind of thing. But people don't realize that these things, they grow from infants on up to adult sizes. So you're going to see a large amount of different size of these creatures throughout Florida and across the United States. Now, what some of the evidence I've found, and our team has found is, 18-inch tracks here in Florida. And,
okay, now I think those were in Kissimmee, I believe.
Kissimmee, that's one of the areas, yeah. And
where specifically in Kissimmee? Do you know? Can you?
That particular area was in Three Lakes Water Management Area.
Where is that?
That's a large area in Kissimmee. There's a little area called Yeehaw Junction.
Okay.
And you may have, if you're ever riding down the turnpike and you see a sign that says Yeehaw Junction.
Yes.
It's not far from there. And if you're going ever taking the turnpike there in that area, you can see how massive and thick the forest is there. So there is nothing for miles and miles and miles. And there's a lot of hunting leases out there, and a lot of water management property. And that's where in that area, one of the areas out there is where we found it. A good size prints out there, along with these palmetto bushes that were just smashed down like something really heavy. Just, the only way I can think about it is something had an itch and decided to lay on these palmetto bushes and just scratch their back like a bear.
Oh, okay.
These things were just flattened down. And I was like, you know what? All the years that I've been out in the forest and the woods and different parts, I've never seen something like this before. And so as we started, canvassing the area, looking for any kind of clues and sign, this is where we found those 18-inch prints.
Right.
And you can see those pictures on our website there. And along with that, we found a grapefruit that looked like it was pulled apart with fingers. And actually, Diane was with us that trip, and she actually saw, and we saw, teeth marks inside the grapefruit. Like something was, just, biting into it, and you can see the teeth marks just getting all the nutrients out of that grapefruit. And then the seeds themselves were all piled up neatly in a pile.
Right. A bear doesn't do that. And deer don't do that.
Humans don't do that either. We'll be spitting the seeds out left and right, but this thing was, systematically putting them in a little pile. And there was 2 little piles of it. So, Diane, I know Diane was a
pattern, right? That's another pattern that they show, right? Is doing things like that, like piling rocks in certain ways and stuff.
Yeah, and now none of us have a clue why they do any of the things they do, because unless they can speak English and or any kind of human language, we can have a nice conversation. But we don't know why they do the things they do. We can just pick up these patterns that they do that, and this evidence that they leave behind, we can see that, okay, well, this was a pattern of these creatures that they do this for whatever reason. We don't really know, but it was very interesting. That area is very interesting. There's been many other sightings in that area as well.
Okay, so when I moved from New York, in '89, I lived in Kissimmee. And it wasn't as developed as it is today. Actually, I was in Kissimmee today, but I remember a lot of areas being heavily forested, particularly on my route from my house going to Osceola High School, because I used to go to Osceola High School. And there were times where, and you know this because you lived in Florida long enough, when you had like a street, no sidewalk, the grass was essentially the sidewalk, and it was maybe 6 feet. And then nothing but forest, on a wall of forest on one side, and then the same thing across the street. And I would have to walk. I remember at times, like early in the morning when it was still dark, walking and having the sense of being watched or hearing something pacing me. And then I would stop, and it would stop.
See, that's a pattern.
And then I would continue to walk, and then it would continue to walk. And then after a while, it would leave me alone. But I never thought in my mind, Bigfoot. I always thought maybe a cat. I also know that there's swamplands, swamps in there. Maybe it was a gator. I mean, granted, I don't want to get eaten by one, but still, after
gators don't usually do that.
Right, but after years of listening to so much information and learning the patterns, I just kind of thought in the back of my mind, I wonder if it was something like that. So, St. Cloud, Polk County, anything in there?
Oh yeah, St. Cloud, especially in Polk County, there's a lot of sightings in the Green Swamp area. That's where our stomping grounds are. That's when I moved down to Lakeland in 2004 from North Florida. A buddy of mine, that's on our team. He actually lived here, and now he lives in St. Cloud. He had to move over there for work, but he lived in Polk County in North Lakeland, and actually lived really close to the Green Swamp, closer than I do. I'm about 40 minute drive.
Now how large is the Green Swamp? Like how many acres?
Well, there's different parts of the Green Swamp. It's probably water management wise properties like over at least 3,000 acres or more.
Wow.
I know there's different parts of it too, and it's a big area, but water management breaks it up into different parts of the land. There's private land that's all considered the Green Swamp as well.
Right.
So it's just a massive area.
Right.
It's part of the corridor that goes on down through the to Hillsborough River, and the north part goes up to Leesburg area, up close to Ocala. So it's a nice little corridor.
Right. So you have all these large masses of land that connect to each other.
Yeah.
So so something can go in there and just travel all the time without being seen.
Yeah. And they got food, they got water, and they have lots of natural springs. So you got really good fresh water too,
right?
And not just stagnant water. But most of all the areas are just really thick vegetated areas. So they have plenty of land to move around in, to hide in, to live in, and that sort of thing. But what you were saying about being what I call that being shadowed,
right?
Yeah, that's one of the patterns that these things do. That's one of the ones that I would always read about on these encounters. Bluff charges, that was another one. These things looking in people's windows, going through garbage, killing dogs, and just all these little bits of patterns that go with the puzzle of all this.
Correct.
The most intriguing thing we found in the Green Swamp, I didn't find actually. It was another teammate that was out there, another investigator, of an area where a hunter had an encounter many years, probably about 2 years before we discovered this, or saw this was discovered. The hunter had, of course, his encounter there early in the morning in the Green Swamp when he was hunting. I think he was deer hunting, he was deer hunting because he had a rifle. And this one walked right out in front of him. He thought it was actually another hunter in a ghillie suit. And it was early in the morning, so it was kind of that time of the morning where it's kind of just dark enough you can't really make out a lot. And had a little bit of light because the sun was coming up, but he didn't have a whole lot of light. But he noticed that the guy, or he thought this was a hunter, didn't have a rifle with him. He's walking across, and he's sitting facing a big open field. This field had vegetation, palm fronds, and brush. About, say, my height would probably be up to my thigh.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'11", almost 6. So it would be probably up to my thigh or my waist. And this thing was just coming across, and he was looking at this thing, and he figured out that, hey, this isn't a hunter. And this thing had stopped right in front of him. And I'm guessing, I think he was probably 30 or 40 yards from him. And this guy is all decked out in camo, right? And this thing just turns and looks at him dead in the face. And he goes, as he's looking at this thing crossing, he has his phone and he's taking a video of this thing. And as this thing looks at him, then he started getting nervous. And he said when this thing turned its head and looked at him, he goes, he knew it wasn't a hunter at that point. So he put his camera down, his phone camera, and he grabbed his gun. And he said, as soon as he did that, this thing turned and just bolted across that vegetation, that real high vegetation,
right,
like it was nothing. I mean, it was like you were a football player hitting a 40-yard dash,
right.
And it was gone. And he goes, then he really knew it wasn't
Right.
a guy in a suit or anything, but I saw the video, and he said it was kind of a crappy video because it was not much light and it was foggy, and it looked like on the video, he said it looked like a tree stump. He says, but during the day, you look out there is no tree stump there. And he said it just boggled his mind. He said he finally saw a skunk ape, been out there hunting 30 years or so, and always heard stories.
So it's one of those stories where the person probably didn't believe in it. For
probably
so
not.
Many years,
I heard stories,
Yeah.
And
then this thing showed intelligence, knowing that this person went from the phone to the gun.
Mm-hmm.
So
now the other intelligence I'm going to bring up is in that same area.
Right.
This was probably a couple of years after this. We go in these areas just to see if we can find sign, even though the reports are many years old, because they're going there for whatever reason. Either it's a shortcut, we're trying to pick up signs or evidence that these things are traveling through different corridors of the swamp. And a couple of the researchers that were there, they found two of these cypress trees. And these two cypress trees were probably about 3 inches in diameter because they were growing pretty close to each other. If you can picture that in your mind, 2 cypress trees going straight up. Okay. Now, these cypress trees were at the tops of them, which I would venture to say that they were approximately maybe 8 feet tall. The tops of them were woven into each other. 2 separate trees, like a horseshoe type of thing, or arc, like an arch. Now, I've never seen anything do that. I've never seen it do it naturally like that, which would be very, very odd if it did grow like that. And is it a possibility that it could? Yeah, but you would see that more often in the forest, which I've never saw happen before. But these two, if you take the two of these tops of these trees and bend them over in an arc and just twist them together and just left it there, that's what was found, and it's there today. I took many pictures. A lot of us took video and pictures of it, and we even asked the guy that knew the hunter that had the encounter, Rob Robinson. I said, Rob, can you ask the hunter, because he was in contact with him. I said, can you ask the hunter? I said, if this was here at the time he was hunting, and he was one day he did ask him, and the hunter said, he goes, no, that wasn't there when I was hunting. And he said, if it happened after I left. He goes, I don't hunt out there no more after that experience. And so, what it is it possible? Maybe so, but it could be. But then there was an article with Dr. Bingdenagel. I probably butchered his last name, but he was in Russia with some researchers, and he was doing some research over there in a different remote area out there where they call him the wild man out there as well.
Oh, is it the Almasti or the Yeti? The Yeti for sure, but I think one of them is the Almasti.
Almasti, yeah. I forgot what they call it, but I know for sure in that particular area that he was in researching in, they were calling it the wild man or something like that, because that's what the locals there called it as well. Right. And that's a typical name here in the States as well with the Indians. And there was an article on this, and then what they found was this same type of an arch.
No way.
Over there. Yeah. And there was a picture of it, and I have that on the website as well. So that's a comparison, like, these things are doing these particular things here in the States as well as overseas in different countries. And what they mean, I don't know. I mean, we can always guess, there's a lot of speculation on things because, we just don't have the answers to a lot of it. But we do know that this falls into their types of patterns that come about, you may see. But so very interesting stuff.
So how far back do you know, like, because we all, like, when people talk about Bigfoot, whether they know it or not, they always reference the Patterson Gimlin film. But how far back in the history do you know about Bigfoot? Like, how far back does this go?
It goes back, from what I've read, way back to the mid part of 1700s to 1800s. So there's a lot of, it's hard to find a lot of articles back, but if you dig deep enough, somebody did dig deep enough back to the 1700s. I think it was like the latter part of the 1700s where there was actually reports, but it wasn't, there was no names like Bigfoot or Sasquatch. It was all called, either an Indian name that the Indians had named them, like something like the Stick Indians or something like that, or or say the white man back then would call them like just a wild man of the woods. So you would have to dig back that far to find different common names that are associated with these creatures to pick up those articles. But they go back, I believe, in the late 1700s. I believe they go back that far. Now the biggest question is, why are they here?
That's a huge question.
How do they fit into our? How do they fit, or how do we fit into their world? That's the thing. Are we?
And what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, it's strange. I mean, it's like it's what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? But that's the biggest question. Is like, what are they and why are they here? As I got into this years ago, you hear a lot of people, I've heard over the years, many years, that some people are like strictly, these are flesh and blood creatures, or, they don't want to go into like a paranormal area of
the woo. Research. Yeah, they call it the woo.
The woo factor. Yeah. But that the more you dig into anything like paranormal, and this is paranormal because it's out of our norm, that we live in our lives, because we live in our own little bubble and they live in their bubble. So sometimes those two worlds clash together and cause confusion with people's understanding of what they are. I don't know. I mean, it's a big question mark, and that's one of the reasons I'm still in this to this day.
Right. And don't cover those things.
Yeah. To figure out those deeper questions. But as you dig into these things, like one person says that they've seen some strange things while researching. They see orbs, they see all kinds of other strange things. I don't. Over the years, I've learned to realize that you can't discount a lot of things just because you don't, you can't understand it, like the woo factor type of thing. I was kind of like that for a little bit. Then as I was listening to more people that had reports, eyewitnesses, they would say, it was a typical Bigfoot sighting, that was happening. But then this thing did this strange thing that I don't understand what happened. Like what they call cloaking,
Correct. Yeah.
Or they just disappear in the thin air. So as you dig deeper, and my biggest thing is our biggest evidence is, or help in this field is eyewitness encounters. It's not hearsay. You go right to the source and you ask them, and you get all that juicy information from them. And I usually say, at the end of it, after I get all the information, excuse me.
No, it's okay.
I kind of like pause and I said, okay, is this everything that you told me that has happened in this encounter? Because some people are reluctant to say, well, this thing did some strange stuff. I just don't want to, come across like a, crazy person because most people don't understand what, what these things can possibly do. And we still don't. But, that's where you get all the juicy information stuff. Yeah. I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen possible UFO just sitting out in the sky, and on two different, in 2 different occasions. It's weird.
You mind getting into that?
Yeah. I mean, we were in an area in the Green Swamp, and we were in a section where there was 2 ponds, and we were just kind of. And it's very cold. It's usually back in the usually it's in the 30s or 40s in the Green Swamp, because you get down here in Florida, when you're out in the woods, it gets a lot colder out in the forest than it does in town. So, and usually, in my opinion, and what I've observed, is when it gets really cold, like in the 30s, that's when all the strange stuff starts coming out at night. So as we're sitting there and we're just kind of scanning around, looking through night vision and therms, and have audio rolling, and on our parabolics, I look towards the south where our camp was. I'm looking and I'm seeing this light in the sky, and it's not just one light. It's like 3 different colors, and they're kind of glowing, bright and dim, bright and dim. And each one of the colors, which was, I think, red, orange, and blue, were doing that. Like they would all do that in their own different types of ways. Not a unison. It wasn't a unison type of thing. It was kind of like boop, 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 and it would just fly, get bright and dim, but they were all together in one sphere type of thing. And I called over Willie on our team. I said, Willie, you see that up there? Because I wanted to confirm that he saw the same thing I did. I wasn't losing my mind. I said,
right.
Can you tell me what that looks like? And I actually got my binoculars out at night, and I'm looking at this thing, and it's just sitting there hovering. And so I'm trying to take video of this thing, with my camera, and did some of that. And then the next day, when it's bright out and during the sun, we went to look for that in that particular same area, because it didn't move. It just kind of like hovered there.
Right.
And there was nothing there. We thought maybe we knew there was a tower. There's like a cell tower, but it was just flashing a red light at night. You can see it. But this was pretty close to that, but not right on top of that tower. But it wasn't there during the day, and it was there the night before. Now, the second occasion we were out there, this was like many months prior. I think the next winter, we were back out there, and this time I had Willie with me, and another teammate, Bill, and his wife Bettina was up there. They're from South Florida, in Miami area, and I didn't think about it until I looked towards the south again, and there's that thing, same spot, sitting there hovering, right, doing the same stuff. So I called Bill over. I said, Bill, you see that up there? And he goes, yeah, what is that? I said, that's the same thing me and Willie saw, a year ago. And then after that, he was really intrigued with that. So he lives in South Florida, Miami. So he calls me one day. This was several weeks after that particular night. And he goes, Dave, you're not going to believe this, but I was in another location where he does research down there, near Okeechobee. He goes, "You remember that thing you showed me up in the sky?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, we saw the same thing down here."
Wow. Well, you know what's crazy?
Yeah.
My brother, who's a cop in Polk County, I think 2 or 3 mornings ago, calls me and tells me, he's like, I'm walking my dog and I'm seeing this orb. Described it the exact same thing that you saw. And he said the same thing to himself. He's like, I'm going to wait for the daytime to come to see if there's a cell tower there.
Right.
Because he thought it was a cell tower. And it was, and you know, he's on the phone. He's like, I'm looking at it right now as I'm talking to you. And he's like, it's not moving. And there's all these lights. He's like, I've never seen anything like this before. And he was a cop also in Missouri. So he's seen strange things out there as well. But he knows planes, you know, helicopters, all that stuff.
Right.
And morning came and that thing just, it was gone.
Yeah. And if it was a drone, some people are probably saying right now, oh, it's probably a drone. Well, drones, you know, for the most part, I mean, we sat there for at least 45 minutes. Now, I don't think there's any kind of drone that's going to sit there and hover that long without the battery dying on it, because, you know, unless you got like a super expensive one that can, you know, unless it's one of those types of drone that's just, you know, tethered to a battery pack somewhere on the ground. But it was strange that we saw that. But yeah, there's some of the things that we run across that are pretty sure. Now, one of the other guys, he was down in the Everglades, and he was down there with some other guys doing some research, and he was on Turner River Road down there, and that's a big area. Lots of gators. But he was there on that road at night, and he saw a red orb. And he was trying to run the thing down. You know, is going down this road, down the road, and Turner River Road, and it's a dirt road. And I don't know if it's paved now or not, but it was a dirt road back then. But he was flooring it in his little truck. He had, I think he had like a little Ford Ranger or something. And he goes, the faster he went, the faster this thing was ahead of him. Wow. And then it would just dart off into the woods and then zip back in and zip back. And it was just, he goes, it was weird. He goes, this thing was just, it knew that I was trying to catch up with it. And it just kept going, you know, it would just evade him really fast. And
maybe he was trying to lead him somewhere.
Maybe, I don't know, or just trying to get away from him. I don't know, but he said that was really strange. He tried to chase it down. I know it's funny, but yeah,
well, let's get into your research team a little bit.
Yeah,
like how many members do you have?
We have like a core group of researchers. We have probably about almost 20, I think, on our team right now. Right. And we have a group of core researchers that, what I call core researchers, that are out there in the field constantly. And we've probably got about 8 to 10 of those folks. And,
so when you do like research, like do you break them up, or do you say, oh, this week me and these number of guys these number of team members are going? How does that work? Or do you send different groups out to different places and then come back and reconvene?
Yeah.
You know, how does that work?
I encourage, well, a lot of our teammates, they live in different counties in Florida. So I always encourage them to, you know, to get out in those areas that, you know, you seem fit, you know, to get out there in these different areas. Because, you know, I like to keep all of us independent and doing our own type of thing in this research, and kind of have a network of independent researchers that can group together and say, hey, okay, this is what I found here, this is what I have found over here, and then we can concentrate on a specific area if there's a lot of activity, and that's how we do it. Now, when we do get together, a lot of, you know, our core group, we do try to break up in smaller groups and hit different parts of the swamp, because it's a large area here in Florida. In different areas, you got to cover as much ground as you can in so many hours, and of course, all of us having jobs to go through during the week, you know, kind of like the weekend warrior type of thing. But yeah, we tried to break it up into smaller groups and go in different areas. And then at the end of the day, or, regroup and say, hey, let's go over what we found for the day. And we do a lot of the night investigations as well. So if somebody said, hey, yeah, I heard something over here in this area, we should go concentrate on that tonight and see what happens, see what we get. And that's basically how we tackle some of the areas here.
Right. And I know, is it based off of like eyewitness stories? Like, do you hear a story and then you go out and do research, or is it something where it's like, hey, we haven't researched this area, let's go give it a shot?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of half and half. Some of it's from some old reports that we get. Unfortunately, we don't get a whole lot of hey, this happened last week. You need to get out here. That kind of thing. That would be awesome. And we it's very seldom that we get something like that, because especially with eyewitness accounts, because a lot of people, if they're not into this, they're going out fishing, they're going out hunting, you're just going out in the woods, riding around, doing whatever. They're not looking for these things. These things are just happening to them. Right. They're not asking for an encounter. And they may particularly not believe in any of it, and they don't want to be looked upon as, someone's crazy, lost their mind, these things don't exist. But I've talked to a lot of people that thought that way until one day they did see one, and then, it just kind of rocks the world. And now the one gentleman, I listen to podcast shows, and Sasquatch Chronicles, I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah, Wes is awesome. I love Wes.
Yeah, he's an awesome dude. And I've been listening to his information, his podcast and the information on there. And I was like, man, where were these when I was starting out? Man, this is awesome. Because I could just sit here and listen to it all day long, different ones one after the other. But I listened to the one that was in Florida, and this guy by the name of Steve, he had the most aggressive encounter that I have heard in Florida in all my years of doing this research. And I was like, oh my God. So I contacted Wes, and I said, Wes, you got to give this guy my information, have him call me. I said, this is not, in the realm of things of Florida. I said, this is not far for me to go and investigate. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hour drive. And I said, I gotta have this guy call me. And so he did. He gave me my information, and Steve called me, and him talked well over an hour or more. And that by far is probably the most aggressive Sasquatch encounter that I've heard of, because he got charged by one.
What happened? Can you go into that story?
Yeah, I mean, you can hear that. It's on our website if you want to go into detail. I can kind of cut it down a little bit because it's kind of long. But and hear me listening to it on the podcast, and I'm like, my jaw is falling, and I was like, oh my God. And when he contacted Wes's show, this happened. I want to say it happened like a week or so prior. And he, the poor guy, when we talked, I mean, he was on the phone. He was like reliving the whole thing, man. He was shaking.
Traumatic, huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And unfortunately he had some PTSD from it as well.
I would imagine. Yes.
Well, he was a avid fisherman, and still is. And he was going to have a tournament in this area. So he has a fishing boat, but he didn't bring it this day. He has a kayak, a sit on top kayak, and he took this out to the area, and he parks his car or his vehicle in a particular area, and then it takes him about 45 minutes to kayak out to this location where it's his one of his areas that he's fished in for 20 years. Okay. Same spot. He goes out there and he's fishing for redfish. He's seeing how good the redfish are in that area for the tournament for the next weekend. And as he gets to the spot, he's fishing, he's throwing his line in, and he catches a fish, and he hears this god awful growl scream thing, and he's about 25 he said 25 feet from the shoreline. And there's a little shoreline there. And he's just off there, and he's fishing, and he hears this growl, and then he gets hit with this smell.
Oh, yeah.
So this smell, he says, Dave, this is the worst thing I've ever smelled. He goes, it's one of those that just, you want to puke. That's how bad it was. And as he was reeling in the fish, he decided, I'm getting out of here, man. I can't stand this smell. And throws the fish back. He puts his rod down. He gets his paddle, and he said, I took a couple strokes on the paddle. And he goes, and all of a sudden I see these pigs, hogs just tear off. And he thought he scared these hogs on the shoreline. So all these hogs are, running away, and he's looking at these things. He goes, as I'm looking at these things, he goes, I see this massive hand pull down a palm frond, and then he goes, I'm looking at a face looking at me.
Oh my Lord.
And he goes, I can't tell you how long we stared at each other. He goes, maybe less than 30 seconds. And he goes, David goes, like I said in the podcast on Wes's show, he goes, I don't know if this thing was squatting or sitting down or what have you. He said, but this thing bolted and toward him. He goes, it was almost like lightning how fast this thing moved. And it ran toward him towards his kayak, or at his kayak. And I guess he thought this thing was just going to just pile drive him over. And he fell back off his kayak into the water. And he jumps back up, and he's got his oar in his hand, and he's yelling at this thing like, go away, bear, go away. Cause he didn't know what the heck this was. That's all he knew what to say, to be aggressive himself and try to scare this thing away. And the thing didn't move. But now at this point, this thing is 12 feet from him into the water. And he says, I don't know if it was the water was up to his knees or his thigh or what have you. He says, I didn't really pay attention to that part of the body. He says, I was just focused on its facial movements, and probably from his face to his torso, maybe. Because he wanted to see what his next move was going to be. If it was going to tear his limbs off from limb to limb, leave him out there to die, or what. But he said it didn't do anything to him. It just did that bluff charge at him, stopped, and but he did say it had a look on his face like it just, he just wanted to kill him, And then it turned around, and it walked back on the shoreline a little bit, and it was going back into the wood line. And it turned around one more time, looked at him, but this time he said it had like a confused look on its face, like, what are you doing here? So I told Steve, I said, well, maybe you interrupted its hunt. Maybe he was hunting those pigs and you messed it all up, just by being there. And it was pissed and it just wanted to chase you out of the area, So after that happened, he says, Dave, he goes, I don't remember getting back to my kayak. I don't remember paddling the 45 minutes back to my vehicle, getting in my vehicle and driving home. He goes, it's all a blur. He goes, I don't remember doing any of that. And I said, it's your brain is trying to process what you just saw.
Yeah.
Because he said, he goes, I'll tell you, because I've heard about Bigfoot and stuff. He goes, I just never really give it much thought. I heard, people, Harry and the Hendersons is probably about the biggest thing he's ever heard about it, and hearsay of that, but he's never had an encounter such as that. In the past couple of days, he would, he didn't tell his wife or his kids what happened for a very long time. He kept it bottled in, and he would wake up with nightmares, cold sweats, and that sort of thing, like he was reliving it. And unfortunately, yeah, he had a lot of rough road after that, because, do I tell my wife? Do I tell my kids? Do I,
Right.
all that kind of thing. All that went through his mind constantly. And his whole perspective of everything that he's learned changed in a matter of seconds. And, but yeah, he's doing much better. He's still, he's apprehensive about getting into the woods. He wants to know more about it, but he doesn't want to get too close. It's one of those things. You want to know more, but maybe at a distance.
Yes.
It really messed him up. And he actually told me one day that he goes, Dave, it wasn't for you talking to me, because we talked several more times,
Right.
afterward, many times. He goes, he goes, you're right. He goes, if it wasn't for me and you talking about this, he goes, I probably would have done something really stupid and just ended it, because that's how bad it affected him.
Right. You provided like therapy for him, essentially.
Yeah, kind of, sort of, because I would tell him, I said, you're not the only one that's had an experience like this, and you got to talk. The more you talk about it, the better, gets it off your chest. You're not the only one out there that's had encounters like this. So, it does help with people that,
Right.
have hard time understanding about these creatures. And he would tell you, and there were several times, one time actually Adam Davies came to Florida. He said, hey, I want to go out and check out that area that I heard about, that report. And I ran into him at the conference in the International Bigfoot Conference in Washington State. That's where I went, because I wanted to see Bob Gimlin, and that's why I flew out. And that was for my 50th birthday. And
the legend. He's a legend.
Yeah, the legend. I wanted to go see the man, the legend. And that was really fun, more than I expected happened there. And got to meet some really good people. Travis Walton from Fire in the Sky, the gentleman. Yep.
He's an awesome guy too.
Yeah, he is. He is awesome. Actually, I found out he was on the same flight along with Ken Gerhardt. We were all on the same flight.
Man.
Yeah. Well, you can pick. You can always pick out Ken, because he's the only one on the airplane with a hat.
The hat. Yeah, he always has a hat on. Yeah.
And
cowboy hat. Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was him or Lyle Blackburn, but
right.
But I knew we were going to Washington State, so I knew he was going to speak. And I knew Lyle was going to be there too, so I didn't know which one it was until I got up and used the bathroom on the plane. I had my Bigfoot cards I carry with me. So on the way back, he was reading a book or something in the plane, and on the way back to my seat, I reached over and I gave him a card and I said, "Hey, you're not going to find Bigfoots up here, man." And he just kind of looked at me and goes, "Hey, Dave, how you doing?"
That's cool, man. That's cool, man. Yeah, because you're talking about the PTSD thing. I was in the military for 4 years, and I was there during like 9/11.
Oh man!
There was
Thank you for your service, man.
No, I appreciate it. I didn't go overseas. I was lucky. I guess I was lucky or unlucky, whatever the case may be. I worked in the armory when I was in the Air Force, so it was hard for them to find a replacement. So I wasn't able to go overseas, but I saw a lot of the guys that came back and how they changed from before.
Oh,
and
yeah,
a lot of them would not tell their families the things that they saw and experienced. So I can understand that whole PTSD and holding it in and having these feelings of, and nightmares and all that, because, all that stuff runs through your head constantly.
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, it comes in many forms too, so, but yeah, unfortunately, yeah, and you wouldn't think it would, but, a lot of people deal with it, man. It's like, yeah, I saw something I don't believe in, or, I never thought these things would exist. I actually talked to a woman that actually I'd say but they had a road crossing sighting early in the morning. And
where at?
This was just South Polk County. And, yeah, and they were, her and her husband and her son were in a vehicle, and they were coming back from the Tampa location over there fishing early in the morning. And they were coming back because they, trying to get their son. He had to go to work early that morning. So they're trying to get back in time to get him off to work. And it was still dark out. And this was off of, what's that road? It's not 60. I'm going to say it's the very end part. Gosh, I can't remember now right offhand. But there's a lot of farm and, cattle property down south end of Polk County. And this is just a, 2-lane road. And this Sasquatch Bigfoot ran right in front of their vehicle. Well, I'd say within less than 50, 60 yards. And there was a vehicle ahead of them. And they actually got a good look at this thing because of the taillights of the other car and their headlights hitting it at the same time, kind of lit it up pretty good. And she said it was a dark figure, and she says about 6 or 7 feet tall and jet black hair. It just went from left to right or north to south, if you look at it that way. So I started looking up this, but while she's telling me this on the phone, she starts to cry.
Wow.
And I said, that's okay. Take your time. You don't have to rush this. I mean, just tell me when you're ready. And but she started crying because she didn't think that these things ever existed or didn't know what they were. She heard of Bigfoot, that sort of thing, and but she never saw one, never believed that they existed until then.
Wow.
When they passed it where it crossed, that's when the smell came into their vehicle, and it was that same putrid smell.
Again with the smell.
Yeah. Yep. So as I was doing research on that area, I was looking at the area because there's a lot of fields that are wide open. I mean, you can see across them, but there's other areas where probably 30 or 40 yards, there's like little creeks or little trees and brush that grow in between that separate the two properties or many of the properties there. So I was looking at this property, and there's railroad tracks as well. That's another avenue that they would travel. But these areas where there's a lot of coverage of trees and brush, this is where this thing ran from. Went from one end of the road or one side of the road to the other side of the road, but stayed in that cover of trees. So they're using that to cover themselves, sort of camouflage themselves as cutting through properties and so forth. Because I believe these things they can be sitting in a bush and you wouldn't see it, and even broad daylight, just sitting still. But I called her and talked to her a couple times, and she was so excited one time because she wanted to tell me a lot of stuff. And actually, she did her own research, which is really good. It's kudos for somebody like that, because she really wanted to know how many sightings happen. She did the moon phases because she knew what the moon phase was that night. So she looked up all the reports of BFRO and other reports of actual eyewitness encounters that happened. And she said, that same moon phase, I think it was the waxing moon phase, where I think it's the waxing moon, where it's bright but not so bright with the moon. And she told me that there was a lot of reports during those times at night that people would have encounters
in that area.
Well, not in that area, but just the whole state of Florida and different parts of the country. And like I said, well, I commend you for doing your research on that. I said, because that's awesome. Because a lot of people don't do that. Because she really want to know. She, in her mind, she wants to know if she's crazy or not. And of course, there again, I assured her that no, you're not crazy. You're not the only person that's seen these things, and these types of scenarios. You're not the only one. So.
Right.
That was awesome. Yeah, but there was lots and lots of reports, man. Now, last year, I'm trying to think what state it's 2002. My mind's getting all all the years of getting colliding together.
They all blend together. COVID didn't help, so
Yeah, it didn't help. No, yeah, and I had that too. Oh gosh, I don't wish that on anybody, but I made it through all right. But actually, after I actually recovering from COVID, I actually went out with a guy that had an encounter way back many years. He had a road crossing sighting too, but he started going out. He's a hunter, so he goes out in these different areas. And this was in, I'm just going to say it's in the Tampa location. Okay. And it's a lot of forest, part of that corridor area I was telling you about. It's in that corridor area. And he wanted to take me out there. He sent me a picture one day when I was working. He said, "Hey Dave, tell me what I'm looking at." And he sent me a picture of this, it's a cedar tree, and again, another cedar tree, and there's oak tree. If you ever seen the oaks down here in Florida, some of them they kind of grow and they sprout out like a V shape. Yeah. Okay. Now this oak tree was doing this, and this oak tree was probably 10 or 12 inches. Well, maybe less than that. No, they were less than that. I want to say 8 inches in diameter, maybe 10, and they were splitting off like a V shape. Well, this cypress tree was wedged in between those two oak limbs. And the weirdest thing is that the root ball of that tree was up in the air, and the top of the tree was down towards the ground. Yeah. And as he sent me this picture, I was like, "Holy crap!" I said, "I said that's awesome, man." I said, "Where is this? Where's this located at?" So, I said, "Well, from what I've read with many reports in different parts of the country, this is kind of like a territorial marker type of thing, like stay out or keep out, that kind of thing." So we eventually went out there with a couple of the teammates and canvassed the area. And I was looking around. And I asked him, I said, "Are there any of these trees in this location right here?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "There's no cedar trees in this vicinity here." He goes, there is some, probably, I think he said 100 yards or so away from here in the more swampy area. Yeah. And I said, "So what you're telling me is that something, either a helicopter dropped this out of the sky and it landed like that, or something either pulled this thing up out of the ground or picked it up off the ground and carried it here and wedged it in here for whatever reason." He goes, "Well, they do a lot of hunting in this area." So, and I said, "Well, it could be a sign that they're telling, wanting them to keep out of this area." As we were looking around and doing measurements and so forth, I'd come across an impression in the ground, which was, the impression itself was measuring about 20 inches. Wow. And, but now it looks big and it seems big, but it looks like, it wasn't a definite print, but it was a big impression. Now this was in pine needles and leaves and so forth, so it was kind of thick in there like that, but it was a very, very well defined impression in the ground as far as that goes, and the weight of it too. Something heavy had to push this down in there. That was pretty impressive. So I was trying to do the calculations, trying to guesstimate of the actual size of the print. Well, it had to be something big. It's bigger than my foot, obviously, and wider than my foot. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, well, it had to be something really very big and very tall, especially something that would pick up a tree that size and wedge it in between these two oaks. And the cedar tree measured probably about a good 18, 20 inches in diameter.
And how heavy are those things? They're heavy, huh?
Oh man, they're heavy. Yeah. They're pretty heavy. It would take probably 5 guys to pick something up or more, big burly guys, somebody that probably is in the gym all the time, but it's something with some weight to it that had to be carried over there and wedged in between these trees.
And it couldn't be a storm, maybe a storm, like major storm, maybe? Could it be something like that?
It could have. I mean, anything's possible, but
because that's what people would think, you know.
Well, yeah, I would have seen more trees like that. That type of tree in that same area. But there was only one tree, and we went in many directions of where this tree was at, where this formation was, and didn't see any of those trees in that area. Now, further on down, and like you said, about 100 yards or so down, we saw more cypress trees in those areas. But the other interesting thing is we had to ride bicycles into this area because you can only hike and bike in it on this property. So as we pulled up to this area, right before we were going to go look at this tree, we hear this high-pitched shrill whistle come from our left, and in a more swampy area, just adjacent to where this tree was at. And it's just one shrill whistle. And I had my recorder going, audio recording, but it picked it up very faintly, but not really good. If I had my parabolic on at the time, it probably would have captured it a lot better. But I just had a recorder strapped onto my backpack there as we were biking into the place. So, but that area is really, really awesome. We found a lot of things in there. There's very potential of these things could be traveling through that area. There's a lot of human traffic in there, so I wouldn't think they would be living in the area. I think they would probably travel into those areas for whatever reason, food sources or water sources, what have you. But it didn't look like an area that they would kind of hunker down and live in, you know, especially if they had, especially if they had little ones, you know, if they have little ones, they want to stay far away from human activity as possible. But,
all right. So listen, you do a lot of investigations, and you know how like I watch paranormal, you know, paranormal's to me a broad term, right? Yeah. Everything under that, like that would fall would be ghosts, Sasquatch, UFOs. That's all paranormal, right?
Yeah.
So when you watch these paranormal shows, these investigators, sometimes they go into these properties, like these houses, and right away they get like some of them get like this sense, like this energy. Do you feel that sometimes when you go in, like before you even start investigating, you go into an area, do you get that feeling sometimes where it's like, oh, something's here?
That's what they call that, your sixth sense, I guess. You know, your spidey senses.
Your spidey senses. Does it get activated sometimes?
Sometimes they do. It's especially when you're by yourself. Like when I started this, I started hiking Ocala trails at night by myself. And
you crazy.
People are like, yes, I got that a lot. I was like, yeah, you're crazy. And but yeah, because I wanted to get in there and put my knowledge to work and see if it, you know, a lot of this stuff was true or not. But yeah, the spidey senses thing. Yeah, sometimes you'll get in an area and all of a sudden it just gets dead quiet, you know. Now, some people are more sensitive. I don't feel like I'm as sensitive for those types of feelings as some. Some people, like one of our teammates that were with us, but she passed away several years back. But
cancer, correct?
Yeah, she had brain cancer. Yeah. She was half Cherokee, so
Okay.
she would always have those feelings.
Wow.
Like she would just all of a sudden she'll be fine, sitting around a campfire, and all of a sudden she would just get creeped out for no reason. She goes, "Oh, do you guys feel that?" And I'm like, "No, what are you feeling?" She goes, "You can't feel that? Oh my God." It just feels like a million eyes looking at her. You know?
Now, when she had those feelings, did something accompany that?
It would just get real dead quiet in the areas.
No insect sounds, no animal sounds.
Yeah, nothing. You would hear it throughout the night, and all of a sudden just go.
Yeah,
you drop a pin. Yeah, and now we would hear trees get pushed over or fall over for no apparent reason. But she was more closer to that, what you're talking about, those senses. But I think maybe because she was more connected to her ancestors with with her Cherokee tribe, and so she picked up on a lot of that. Right. But yeah, a lot of interesting stuff, man.
I'm gonna tell you two different stories. Okay, one comes from a former acquaintance of mine. This happened like I want to say in 2006, 2007, at a place called T.G. Lee Boulevard in Orlando.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Now, that area, that area was all like industrial, a lot of warehouses, but behind those warehouses were like vast amounts of swamplands. And so this individual used to work for a pharmaceutical company, and how he told me the place laid out is that you would enter the front, and it would wrap around the parking lot, would wrap around the building to the back, and then the back they had like this little break area. So he would go back there because he used to smoke cigarettes. And anyway, one day he went back there, and there's a swampland, there's a little like pond, and he would watch the gators like fight each other over food and stuff like that. But something told him to look in a specific direction, and this is how he described it to me. He called me up, couldn't say anything, like there was no words that were coming out that I can comprehend. He was like panicking,
right?
Like what did I just see? Yeah, it was just gibberish coming out of his mouth, and I was trying to calm him down to get it out of him. But finally, he told me like I went to the back, I started smoking a cigarette, and something told me to look in this specific direction. And he said, and in this direction, there's like this one big like huge tree. He said it's probably maybe 10 foot across, and then there's a little space. And he said the shrubs were high. He said they were at least, and this guy's bigger than me, so he's probably like about 5'7", almost 6 foot. He said it's about that height. Something steps out from the tree, and all he said he saw was like a chest area, a shoulder, and part of an arm. He said it looked amber, like amber brownish, the fur. Yeah. And then he said the whole thing lasted literally like maybe 10 seconds. It stepped out, and then it went right back in. And then he said that he couldn't see if it was like whatever it was. He said he couldn't see it like if it was moving anywhere because the shrub was so like dense, like on one side of the tree, and then it didn't go on the other side where there was more of an opening. But like it freaked him out. And I'm thinking, this is in Orlando, like that can't happen here in Orlando. So that was one incident, Right. Another incident, and he, by the way, he said it was by power lines. He said, which is, I wanted to bring that up to you, like these patterns that we were talking about, power lines. Then another thing is sometimes I travel, here in Orlando to Kissimmee, and on my way, I'll be on, let's say, the 417. And one time my wife was driving, and I'm in the car, and I like to gaze out into like the different patches of land that I see, like the different foresty areas, and I always wonder what's in there. But there's this little section where it's like a corridor with a railroad line. And you can tell it's not active anymore. It's an old railroad line, but apparently they still maintain the area because there was still like a corridor you can see. I saw like this, it looked like a dog, and it looked huge. But I mean, it's hard to tell distance when you're in a moving car. Right. But what really got me was the back of it. It was on all fours, but the back was kind of bent. I had an arc to it. And I don't know any dog that does that. Okay,
you're going down
huge. So those are
you're going down the Dogman Trail. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean because they also said that I've also heard stories on Sasquatch Chronicles. Yeah. Of Bigfoot going on all fours and
they do.
It's called like a spider walk.
Yes. So either a spider walk or they kind of run like, from what I've been told, on all fours, they kind of run like the, if you saw the movie, The Planet of the Apes, the newer ones, where they're running on, doing like that. Right, like galloping almost, right? Galloping, yeah, so like a gallop type of thing.
So talk about that, like those type of patterns, like railroad lines and power lines. Why those areas?
Well, there's been a lot of, I don't know why they're attracted to them, if there is an attraction to it, or is it just an easy way for them to move through different parts of the areas, railroad tracks, railroad lines, power lines. The Green Swamp, of course, has a big distribution line that cuts right through the middle of it, and then goes several miles north, and then cuts to towards the east, several miles, and then, several miles, and then cuts back north again. So that's, all through there. Actually, there's been a lot of reports on and around those areas from hunters that would hunt off those power lines for deer hunting. But
Right.
they that's a pattern that they use railroad lines to travel through back and forth to different areas, power lines as well. Now where Steve had his encounter, that particular area had a railroad line. Actually, I used to work for that railroad line many years ago. Yeah. That goes all the way from Jacksonville to Miami. So, but in that particular area is super forested right there. And I was looking, as I was researching that area for his encounter, I was seeing how thick it was in there, and it's super thick. We actually went into that location, me and Willie, and man, it was super thick. Anything can be hiding in there, and
Right.
and I believe that there could be family groups or pods that live in that area. But yeah, they travel up and down. I believe that they do use those areas to travel back and forth, especially if if you have residential areas pretty close by where there used to be forest, and now there's housing developing there. Now in 2000, the beginning of 2000, I think this was one of my last reports. I was with the other group that we did a report in Jacksonville, Florida. And so Diane calls me up and she goes, "Hey, we got a report here. You want to go on it with me and go check it out?" And I was like, "Sure, where's it at?" And she goes, "Well, it's in Jacksonville." I was like, "What? Really?" I mean, I said, where could it be possibly happening? There's, at the time,
college town, right? Isn't it like a college town?
Well, no, it's got college people. But it's a metropolis.
Right.
This is right after the Jacksonville Jaguars came in, and things just the whole town just started exploding with more development and stuff. So they were gobbling up any kind of patch of greenness and Duval County to build not condos, but housing developments and apartments and so forth. So as we're going, checking out this area, we had to go meet some guys. And that was very interesting. There's some security guys that were in this area. They were doing security for, I want to say it was like a little strip mall type of area. And behind that was woods. And this wooded area was starting to be developed with housing. But it hasn't been completed yet. And they were completing some of the housing over in one area, and they still had this little strip mall thing over here. Well, kind of the same scenario you were telling me about the guy going out in the back and smoking. Well, this security guy was in the back part of behind the building and near the wood line. And no, he was in the building actually, and he was looking towards this wood line. And there were one of the guys, when he was in the building, he's looking out the window and he's seeing something moving behind a tree. And he sees this huge figure, it's kind of like what you were telling me, typical scenario again, where it was peeking behind a tree. And he gets on the radio and gets one of his other guys that's in a car, a security guard. He says, "Hey man, you come around the back here. I see something. I don't know what it is, but it's pretty big." So as he comes up and the lights hit this tree where this thing was at, it steps out. Oh yeah. And I guess apparently one of the security guards that was there, he was like 6'5" or something, or 6'6". So he's a really tall dude. And he said this thing was bigger than him. And it just slowly stepped back into the woods and just went off into the wood line. They watched it go into the wood line. And then they got called by a homeowner in this development area that they saw something strange, which was homeowner thought it was a dog in this retention pond swimming around, until this thing walked up on two legs and then walked into the wood line. And so the security guys, it's getting really dusk, and these two security guards, they drive around to the back of the property where they're doing the construction, and where they had the roads, but there was no houses, and where the road ends, and then there's the woods. And this guy that owned the property, I guess it was selling off the property to the developers. He had horses on the property, and he had a horse barn back there. And this is where this creature had walked over to.
Right.
And so these two security guards, they go down. Now it's dark. They're going down this road where towards this horse barn, and they know the horse barn's there. And so as they're walking down this road, they have the flashlight on, and all of a sudden these two eyeballs peer out and start staring at them, and all they can see is the eye shine.
Yes.
And so they're like, oh God, what's that? And they're looking at this thing, and it's blinking. They can see it blinking, its eyes, because of their flashlight hitting the eyes. And she goes, oh no, that's probably one of the guys' horses got loose or something. And he goes, no, man. He goes, horses have eyes on the side of their head, not in front of them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can't mess that up.
He goes, well, let's go see what it is. They start walking a little bit further into the location there, and then another set of eyes come out.
So it's two different beings?
Two different size sets of eyes come out, and now these two sets of eyes are looking at them, and they stop, and they're like, oh heck no, we're not going down there. So they beat it out of there. Yeah. But they did get a measurement. They measured it about 8 feet, because on where the flashlight, where they're hitting with the eye shine, there was a power pole there, and on the power pole it had like a little metal stamp or number plate on the pole itself. So they measured that, and it was well over 8 feet tall. So whatever they were looking at was taller than the horses that were there, and it wasn't one of the horses.
Horses are pretty tall,
Now that whole area has been built up, everything's changed, and they moved out. So apparently these things were coming into this area thinking that, they're going to go back to this particular area where they've always been. Right. And now there's homes. Now there's homes all in the area. So that's how these things get seen most of the time, and that's how, unfortunately, we're going to probably get more reports of these creatures, because we're invading a lot of the property here in Florida with housing development.
All right. Do you go outside of Florida, David, by any chance? You and your team?
I don't. Only. I mean, we love to. I love to, but it's with the finances and stuff like that, it's really hard to do that, and getting time away from work and time away from family and that sort of thing. It's kind of hard for me to do personally, but there's been other teammates on our team that are able to go in different areas, different kind of like Alabama and those areas. Right. But for the reports, we love to get the reports coming in and go investigate them. We have our process in doing that. And, you got to weed out the jokesters and the fakers and all that, and during that, well, you have to read, you have to read body language, and you have to, there's a little process that you have to acquire and do. And, now I keep bringing up Steve's encounter. I didn't have to do that with Steve very much, because just talking to him over the phone and then meeting him in person, the guy's like, you're nuts for going out there and looking for this. If you saw what I saw, you wouldn't go back there. And he goes, he fished that area for 20 something years. He goes, I haven't been back there since. I go other areas to go fish. I will not go back there. And, but there's a process that you have to do. You have to read body language really good. You have to do a lot of research on the person themselves. You got to do, unfortunately, you got to do background checks on people, just to see if are they on the up and up, that sort of thing. I've gotten calls from people, hey, I had an encounter here, and can you come out and can go check it out? And in those cases, I actually try to get the people to come out with me. I said, yeah, let's go. You had an encounter here. Do you mind showing me the exact location? We'll meet up and we'll go out to the location. I'll drive, you just tell me where it's at. Either they'll bail out and never call me back when that happens. That tells me, one of two things: either they're lying or they're too scared to even go out and adventure. So, but you really have to do a lot of filtering, do a lot of stuff, because unfortunately there's a lot of people that want to joke around with you and waste your time basically. And that's precious time for everybody. So you want to make sure you're on the right path with canvassing the area and getting the correct information on these reports. Other than that, we know what types of area these creatures live in, so we venture into those areas. So we check out those areas, and if all the marks hit where it's a good area for food, water, and shelter, that's definitely a good area to go check out.
So it's safe to say there's a lot of Bigfoot in Florida. Where would you think are most congregated at? Where would you think you could find the easiest place to go to maybe have an encounter or some sort of experience?
Well, believe it or not, these creatures some of them are kind of brazen. I think the younger ones are more brazen than the older ones. Are more experienced. They know how not to get caught, and sometimes they do. But for the I'd say the adolescence, the teenage years of these creatures, they're more out, like they're between 6 and 7 feet tall. Those are more like the teenagers. Now the more adult ones they're ranging to 8, 9, maybe 10 feet tall, which have been reported here in Florida, believe it or not. So we're getting the same types and sizes that you see out in Pacific Northwest and other areas of the country. So the thing about skunk apes being, these are, they're smaller than the ones out. That's, to me, I like I said, I go by eyewitness encounters that we go on and filter and get hard evidence on these encounters. And especially with hunters, especially a lot of hunters, they can tell distance, they can tell sizes and heights and so forth, because they have to, because they're hunting for a particular animal. So that even if it wasn't exactly 8 foot, but maybe in that realm, they're telling the truth.
So where would I go if I wanted to see one?
If you wanted to go see one,
or have an encounter.
Gosh, if you wanted to go see one, you wanted to really dig deep and put on the brass, what, you'd want to go and just follow the corridor. I mean, anyone who's got Google Earth or look at Florida and look at the corridor. I mean, these creatures are going to be living in those areas, and
you think the most families are in there? Most of the families are in there?
Oh, I believe so. They're going to be. I believe if there's the family units are going to be really in thick areas where humans aren't going to go. Not even deer hunters. They're only going to go so far chasing a deer, that they may have shot. And if it's too thick and they can't get in it, they're not going to go on their hands and knees to go, get the deer out of a certain particular area. Because then they have to drag it all the way back out, and you don't know what you're going to run up against in there. But but for the most part, follow the corridors, man. And a lot of, I'm going to say this, a lot of the state parks, all those areas are prime areas, man. They go into areas, they're opportunists. So if they don't have to chase down and hunt down food to burn a lot of calories, because they have a lot of calories to burn. They rather go dumpster diving. They rather go steal stuff out of people's coolers at night.
Right.
So they're very big opportunists. So
okay. So speaking of stealing stuff out of coolers, there's another story. I'm pretty sure maybe you're aware of it. Have you heard of the story of the Skunk Ape?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that story?
Well, actually, Diane Stocking, she actually, now her name is Diane Ness. She did her own research on that, and she actually spoke to the police department that actually got the photo and the letter, and nowhere on the letter does it have the lady's name. Doesn't have a return address, but she did track down the zip code of where it came from, and it came from a very popular area where there was no woods at all. So she basically said that, none of it added up. All you have is this, all you had with this letter with a story attached to it, with a picture attached that may or may not be photoshopped, or it could be taking a picture of, an orangutan in the wild. But there was nothing adding up to it. So as a researcher and an investigator, you know that when the trail ends, it just ends. There's no reason to pursue it anymore, because all the pieces of the puzzle just don't add up. But like I say, there's a lot of people assume that that's a skunk ape, but it's far from it. A lot of people look at that and say, no, especially eyewitnesses. They'll look at that and they'll say, no, that's not a skunk ape. That's not what I saw. What I saw looked like Patty or similar, of the Patterson-Gimlin film, or bigger.
So have you gotten reports of anything other than, let's say, Sasquatch? Like I kind of didn't want to go there, but like, people that say they saw like a dog-like creature or some other cryptid. Anything that you've gotten? Any other sort of reports like that?
We haven't got any reports per se, as far as that comes in, as far as that goes. But we used to joke about it with Carol Ann, the one that passed away, because she used to freak out. We used to joke with her, but we used to bring up the dog man, the werewolf thing. She goes, "Oh, don't bring that up. You freak me out." And after she passed, I started hearing more and more reports in different parts of the country of these things. And so I said, I'm just going to see what I can see. I actually heard a podcast on, can't remember which one it was, but the gentleman was, actually, he used to work early in the mornings and travel in Leesburg. And he goes, the road that they shot part of the movie of Jeepers Creepers in. I'm like, what? And I'm like, yeah, this thing ran across that particular road in where that movie was shot. And he said, this thing looked like a werewolf.
Wow.
Ran across the road in front of his car. He almost hit the thing. He was within 20 feet or so. Yeah. And I started looking it up and doing some more research just on dogman stuff. And so far at that time, I found 4 or 5 encounters. One in Ocala, ran across the road. One in off of 50 near, is it not St. Cloud? It's over by the turnpike in 27 and 33, which is not far from the Green Swamp area. It was just north of that. I'm like, wow, that's pretty close to to home. And then the one that really blew my lid was I was listening to a podcast show from Dogman Encounters, I think it was, and a gentleman that worked that was had an encounter of a Bigfoot. Actually, his buddy that worked in the park at Mayaca State Park actually had somewhat of an encounter or something. He didn't know what it was, but he saw a dumpster diving in the park, and that was a dogman sighting in there.
Wow, that's crazy. So do you believe that there could be other cryptids out there that run alongside, Bigfoot?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen some weird prints out there that I look at and I'm trying to think, is that a gator print, or is that, what kind of print is that, and you take pictures of it, and you just kind of put it over to the side because it's kind of strange.
Right.
Is it a dog man? Just these things really, from what I've heard and some of the podcasts I've heard, that these things they're very different than a Sasquatch encounter as opposed to a dogman encounter. And from what I've understand from eyewitnesses on both ends of it, that actually one guy that had a dogman actually had both encounters at one time, at different times actually. He said, I much would have rather had a Sasquatch encounter than seen this dogman. He goes,
wow, yeah, I would imagine.
He said these things, and I've heard this quite a few times, these things have a aura about them that it's kind of like an evil feeling that you get. It just comes over you. And he goes, with the Sasquatch, it's not like that. It's, you may feel fear, you may feel something else, like your life's in danger or you're afraid of, what this creature is with a Bigfoot or Sasquatch. But with the dogman, it goes much deeper than that. It's like something's like it almost gets into your head type of thing. Like it knows every part of your being, and it'd rather just kill you than look at you.
Oh, okay.
And that's more than one time I've heard that expression about people having these encounters with these dogman creature things. So I'm like, good gosh, man. I said, I don't think I have a big enough gun to to protect myself against something like that.
Right. That's crazy.
But it is creepy.
Right.
I would not want to run across that.
Who would?
But I do believe they do.
Do you believe they
do travel? I do believe they run in circles with these things. They're the areas that they travel in, same areas these Sasquatch and Bigfoot travel in. So now, one of the questions I have is, these things, are these something that was created by man or something like that, or for whatever reason, are they experimenting, which, I wouldn't put past certain individual groups or something,
Oh, I know what you're saying. Yeah. Yes.
I wouldn't put that past them.
When I was serving in the military, I was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base. So, not too far, and that was in Vegas, so it's not too far from Area 51. There was this sort of legend or lore called Catman. Supposedly, that was an experiment gone wrong. Mm-hmm. So, who knows?
Yeah, I've heard stories of facilities, particularly in Georgia and Carolinas, that they do experiment on certain animals and so forth, and I'm like, man, you don't want to be messing with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like making chimeras, man. Like, you don't want to do that. All right, so David, go into like your first experience, because I want to get into it, like your experiences. What was your first? Yeah, your first experience. What was your first experience?
Oh, gosh, my first experience was.
And what year, if you can get into that, please?
Gosh, that was probably back in 2006, I think it was, is when.
Not too long ago, man.
Yeah. Is when I actually heard whistles in a location. We were in a particular area where there was actually hog hunting going on during the day, and we couldn't go out during the day because they were out. The hunters were out there during the day, but at night we can go. But one of the teammates of ours heard, but as they were going to leave to go home and drive, they weren't going to camp out. One of the hunters approached her and asked her a bunch of questions about during the day, and if we were out during the day doing anything. We're like, no, we were told we were in an area where they were hunting, and we shouldn't have been camping there, but we had a permit to camp there, and we were told specifically by the game wardens to stay in the camp during the day, and then when they're out, we can do whatever we want, So we did that. So they had an experience. These two hunters had an experience there, and they got whistled at and they got shadowed in the wood line. trying to find a good area to hunt. So they were telling her this story at night. So she comes back and tells us their story. And by this time, it's probably about 1 o'clock in the morning, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. We're sitting around the campfire. They were going to leave to go back home again. And all of a sudden we hear 2 whistles just north of us in the pitch blackness. At this time it's quiet. You can hear the wind blowing through the trees, and you hear the crackling of the fire, and that's all. You hear our voices around the campfire, and all of a sudden you hear these 2 shrill whistles go off. And I'm like, oh man, I said, that's it. That's them. And
now, were they opposite of each other, or they were in the same area?
It was they were kind of close together. I don't know if it was the same whistle from the same creature, or they were trying to communicate, or one of them was trying to communicate with somebody, I believe, with another individual creature. Right. So there was nobody out there. I mean, the hunters have already gone. They were gone for several hours after that. So it was just us out there, and there was no other. Like I said, we in that area when they had those hunts. There's no one should be camping out there as far as recreation wise. So we went out, we jumped up and said, we got our thermals, we got night vision. We're looking around trying to find this thing. Couldn't find anything. Couldn't see anything. It was some crazy. and that was one experience. The other experience was in another part of the green swamp where we camp at, and we research in. And we were in mixed company at the campsite. So I said, well, let's get our gear and we'll just go down the road here and we'll go walk towards the river. And there's a little area there by the river that we can go. And it was a little bit of a moon out. It was probably about maybe less than 3/4. So as we got to a point, I said, okay, let's kill our lights and let her sit here and let our eyes get adjusted to the moonlight. And because at that point we didn't need lights to see where we were going. It was pretty good moonlight there. So all this time I have my parabolic mic going and I'm recording as we're walking, and we get to the river. As we're getting to the river, we turn down this little path to get to the river, and I kept picking up sounds, audible sounds, and one was a whistle. Well, not a whistle, but I whistled, and you heard something go whoop whoop, and so we stopped, and at this point I didn't there was a lot of us all in this one group. There's probably 6 of us, but we're being super quiet. We're walking down this road and there's 6 of us trying to be quiet going down this road. And so I picked up a couple of good audios there. And we got to the river and I was picking up more audio, and one was really weird, which sounded like it's very faint, but it picked up, and I didn't hear it when I played it at the camp. But when I got home and listened to it, I could hear it. It was like like a real evil kind of a laugh type of thing. Right. And I was like, whoa. I said, what? I had to play that back a couple dozen times. And that was one. And then another part of the audio I got was, it sounded like if you heard somebody way off in the distance just arguing at the top of their lungs, but you can't make out what they're saying. Right. I caught that on the audio as well. And I'm like, you hear it just like,
like the samurai chatter that they talk about, the samurai
kind of sort of like that. Yeah. I mean, if I was a little bit closer to the sound, it probably would have picked it a lot better. It's was way off, but I still picked up a little bit of it. And then after a while, now granted, I was getting all this audio on the trail we came in on, and I was pointing my parabolic in that direction. I said, we we just walked on that road to get to here. I said, and that's where all this audio is coming from. So whatever it was, we passed it. And
you think it knew you passed it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, that was pretty creepy. That was pretty creepy. And then we got some a branch break that was actually really close. And that audio is on our website as well.
Right.
But yeah, that was pretty intriguing stuff. Like I said, I've seen the evidence that they leave behind. I've heard pretty much everything that they do. Whoops, yell, scream, wood knocks, all that.
But you haven't seen one.
I haven't laid my eyes on one of these things yet. So
it's coming, David. Trust me.
It's coming, man. It's coming. It's got to come sooner or later. Even if I have to go out there and do a Survivor Man Bigfoot myself, and just go out there and get in the mix of it. But now two of the guys on our team, Bill that lives down south, he's been hitting this area near Okeechobee pretty good. And another guy that was on our team, he had a therm on his camera, on his cell phone. And Bill had a night vision with him. And actually, they both got a good look at one that was near their where they were camping at. And I don't know if you heard that rumble, but we got the air show going on at night here, the Sun and Fun here in Lakeland. So you got jets flying over at night. So just shook all the windows in the house here.
I heard that. I heard a little peeking.
Yeah. But Bill calls me up one, I think it was Sunday or something like that. It was late at night. I was like, what's he calling me about this late? He goes, Dave, man, I got to tell you what happened to us. And so he's telling me all this, what's going on and what happened. But they were camping in this area, and they were just looking around. They saw like a bobcat or something out there, and they're kind of looking at that and listening to sounds and stuff. And they were under a little pavilion that had a metal roof on it, and it had picnic tables under it. And it was kind of like a little primitive camp area there. And Bill had his van there. Of course, I call it the mystery van because Bill is he's our go-go gadget guy. He can build and do anything you want out of anything, literally. So he was there, and they were both looking, and he's like, Dave was with him, and Dave says that, hey, Bill, what's this? What do you make on this? He's looking through his little Seek thermal device that's connected to his phone. And he's looking at it, goes, oh yeah. He goes, well, that is amazing. He goes, that looks like a Sasquatch.
Really?
And yeah. And he's looking at through a therm. So Bill gets his night vision out, and he's trying to look on his therm and on his night vision, trying to get the same area. And this thing is behind a palm tree, staring at them. And they're not far at all away. There's probably, I think said there were, 40, 50 yards.
That's
maybe.
Not far, man.
Yeah.
That's like right there.
Yeah. And it was throwing something at them, and they kept
like rocks or something.
I don't know what it was, if it was acorns or what, but he was throwing something because it would hit the tin roof that they were sitting on the picnic tables underneath, and
Wow.
it would roll down the roof, and they're like, what is that? So that's when they started looking around. That's when they saw this thing. Well, one arm was around the tree. You can see that. And so he's, Bill's excited. His first, he finally got to see one of these things. So he's describing what he's seeing when he's looking through his night vision. He goes, man, I can see all the way to the fingernails, the hair, the hand.
No way.
Oh yeah. And he's looking at this thing. He goes, man, this thing's got to be about 7 feet tall. And he said the hair is dark. He goes, it's weird because, it looked like it was wet, like it just came out of the water. And because the hair was sticking to its body, kind of a little bit. And he's telling me all this and I said, Bill, did you hit record?
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, that's
Yes.
what I was going to tell you.
Oh, man.
He goes, I was so in awe seeing this, and so was Dave. And he goes, as their brains was trying to register what they were seeing, he goes, oh crap, I better record this. And as he goes, Dave, it's almost like it read my mind. He says, as soon as I hit the button, he said, this thing just turned and it bolted back the way it came. It went the opposite direction.
Right.
He said he goes, I heard of them moving fast. He says, but it's nothing compared to when you see them move fast. He said, this thing moved and it was bulky. He said it was at least the shoulders were at least 3 foot wide and at least 6.5, 7 feet tall.
It's like a football player.
Yeah, they actually they took pictures of the print, which is about 15 inches by 7 inches, I think it was, 15 by 7. Yeah, and the only thing I could think of is it was another adolescent one just being nosy, trying to come in there and see what they were doing there, in that location. But yeah, I mean, that's awesome. That's awesome.
All right, so as we are close to wrapping this up, what do you think are Bigfoot? Are Bigfoot primitive man that somehow made it all these years? Is it a simian type of an ape-like creature? Is it a hybrid, genetic experiment, aliens taking something from another planet and dropping it off? Like, what do you think this is?
Well, like Wes says, we don't have one in our garage to examine, but at the end of the day, you don't know, but we can, like I said, we can speculate. Now these, if you're asking me, are they more intelligent than most creatures on our continent? Yes, I would say most definitely. Yeah.
Even some humans, they're intelligent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anything that can open up containers with their hands and get food out and then close the containers back and set it back on people's porches, that's intelligence. Bears aren't going to do that. They're going to tear through stuff, rip it apart with their nails and that sort of thing. But these things they do things systematically. So I don't know if I used to think on the terms of these are some sort of ape, but if it was some sort of ape, then we would have them in a zoo. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that tells me they have to be more than just an ape with this intelligence. Now, a lot of people probably debate that,
no, but I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. That makes sense.
Like what chimpanzees can do, but these things, if you listen to the eyewitness reports again, and what they observe during those encounters, they would say that these things acted more human. They may look between ape and man, but their actions look more human-like. So are they a hybrid? I kind of lean towards maybe them being some sort of a hybrid. I don't know, from us or from some other entity or something. I'm not sure. I do know that they may possess some specific, what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Skills?
Qualities or skills that we possibly as humans used to know how to do, but over the years that we've gone away from it.
Right. And you're referencing like the cloaking and all that, right?
Well, not so much cloaking, but I've spoken to a gentleman that actually did our tracking class for us, and they were actually 4 ex-military gentlemen, and all 4 of them knew how to remote view.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he spoke to a gentleman, I think it was in Africa or Asia, somewhere over there, Africa, Asia area. And he was just staring off, had a glazed look over his face, and he was just staring off across the land. And he asked him, he goes, do you mind me asking, what are you doing? He goes, I'm hunting. And this African gentleman is saying, I'm hunting. And he goes, what do you mean you're hunting? He goes, I'm hunting a lion. Apparently this lion was coming in and killing livestock and humans. So they were going to round up a group of guys to go out and hunt this lion down to kill it. And, but he was remote viewing where this lion was going. He actually remote viewed where he found tracks of this lion. So once he found the tracks of the lion, he just followed the tracks and then found the lion. And they were able to kill it. But he remote viewed it first. And a lot of people, I don't know if your audience knows what remote viewing is, but you can always, Google that and look it up. Apparently, as humans, all of us can do that. But it works along with our, I'm going to say this wrong probably, but it's the pineal gland in our
the pineal gland, right?
Yes. And everyone has that, and that's kind of like what women have, the intuition type of thing, or we have intuition. That's pulling from that pineal gland, or
right.
So we don't use that a lot. We've gotten away from using those types of skills. I think these creatures can use those types of skills, and there's probably other skills that they use that either we're not familiar with or they know how to use and we don't. And they could be using quantum physics too for a lot of these things that disappearing in thin air. You see tracks, all of a sudden they disappear and they're gone. You don't see them anymore.
Right.
So are they using some sort of quantum physics in that? Is that something that we can't, or we've gotten away from? Yeah.
Well, they say that our pineal gland, the reason why we can't, like you said, remote view is because it's been calcified.
Exactly.
Because we don't use it. We don't use it. Well, most people don't use it.
And now, if you go back into the days of Hitler, Hitler used something called fluoride to decalcify that, and because what he was trying to do, he didn't want people questioning his actions or why he was doing what he was doing. So he heard about this fluoride that was developed by the Rockefellers, and that he was using a lot of that on his own people,
right,
and others. And I don't know how old you are, but I remember the days when in school when they made us brush our teeth in school with fluoride. with the fluoride capsules. Oh, you got to do this it's good for your teeth. It's good for your teeth. You got to do it and I'm thinking now, I'm older, I'm like, well, why were they telling us that? And now I know how bad fluoride is for the human body consumption.
So Dave, are you admitting you're a conspiracy theorist here, or are we getting into that?
I always say it's not a conspiracy if it's true.
I got you, my man. I got you.
It's not a conspiracy if it's true.
All right, my man. So listen, let's say you had, let's say like you had like a person like Jeff Bezos or like Elon Musk. They got deep pockets.
Oh yeah. Man.
Let's say they send a large group in the Green River. Are they finding Sasquatch? Like, if you had an unlimited budget, would you think you can find the Sasquatch?
Well, I was asked that by a gentleman that was actually going to, and he passed away. Unfortunately, he got cancer, and I found out last year that he passed away. But he was a businessman. He had a couple of businesses, and we sat down and talked. And he asked me straight up. He was one of these people that was interested in the whole thing, but he was not going to go out and do the legwork. He right off the bat, he goes, I'll throw some money at it, but he goes, I want you guys to do this. You guys are you guys are professionals at getting out there and looking for what we're looking for. And he was telling me this, and he asked me, he goes, what's the biggest obstacle for researchers to put an end to the mystery of this? And I told him, I said, the two biggest things is time and money. I said, we all have jobs. We all have to, pay bills. We got families. We got, we don't have, 100% of the time involved. And to be able to do this, in my opinion, to do this correctly,
Right.
like a Jane Goodall approach type of thing, which would be awesome if you had the backing. And he goes, well, what if you had somebody that could do that for you? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, what if somebody put up the money for that, for you to be able to do that? I was like, you can count me in. Count me in. He goes, and we just discussed plans of what he wanted to do. And he wanted to drop quite a big sum of money.
Right.
And I mean big. And I'm like, wow. And it was a really good thought out plan. And I told him, I said, that would be the ticket to do it, to be out in any location.
Correct. And so what would that money be used for? Like, would it be manpower?
It would be man.
Because I think like when I'm, excuse me, I'm sorry.
No,
when I see like people doing research, like anything, even the stuff on TV, finding Bigfoot, Expedition Bigfoot, it's always like a few people.
Yeah.
It's never like a group of 20, 30, 40 people, you know what I mean? And I know it's because of the money part. So if you had that out of the way, if that wasn't an obstacle, would that be like that would that be the approach? More people coming from different angles to maybe bring it to to try to drag this thing into a certain area to eventually find it or capture it or whatever, like would that be the angle?
That would definitely get us closer to them. I don't know. I mean, who knows what these creatures would do one-on-one if you try to capture one or kill one. I definitely wouldn't want to try to kill one of these things, because where you see one, there's quite a few others around, or not too far away from them, but it would take a lot of time and money. Definitely you'd have to be in an area for several months, if not several years, and being off the grid type of thing, being one with the environment, so to speak, them getting used to you, as far as, and I keep bringing this up, kind of like the Jane Goodall approach, how she approached it, the gorillas, silverback gorillas back then. You would have to do something like that. She got so much information off just the gorillas of doing that. And it took a long time for them to get used to her being there. But then once they were used to her being there, it was like, she was just like another part of the forest, another creature of the forest. So that's what it would take, a lot of time and money to do something like that. Now, the shows that you see on TV, a lot of it's entertaining, it's fun, and actually, I know I've met Maria and at the conference, and of course I know Russell Acord.
Russell Acord,
very good, awesome guy. I love him to death, and that's why I met him at the conference, in the International Bigfoot Conference. Actually helped him and all that, and that was a wonderful time. That's another story. I got to meet with Bob, and we all got to go to dinner after the conference with Bob, and I got to sat there and talk to Bob, other than Bigfoot stuff, which was interesting. But Bob is the original cowboy. I mean, he's probably the last of the Mohicans of the cowboys. I mean, this man's been through hell and back. Oh yeah, exactly. But awesome guy, interesting guy. Bigfoot is probably about that much in his life compared to what he's done his whole life. That's how it is. And he'll tell you, he said Bigfoot was only this part of my whole life. And but interesting guy. But yeah, that's what it would take, actually. I mean, we're weekend warriors, so to speak, unless you go into a particular area and you frequent that area. And if it's an area where these creatures inhabit for very long times and don't move off very often, if ever. And there's quite a few areas like that in our country still today. Some of our country are parts of the country have never been explored. You can ask a lot of people, researchers that have been doing this for a long time. But those are the areas that they're going to be in. And that's, time, money, man. That's it. That's the two things that's kind of stymieing the research in this field. I mean, science is not going to spend that type of money to send scientists out there for something that's a myth, considered a myth. So it's going to take people like ourselves, and that's kind of the approach that this gentleman was telling me that he wanted to go in. He wanted to have a group of research across the country, not just in Florida, not just in Georgia or Alabama. He wanted to have them across the country. He wanted to have a hub of scientists, say for instance Jeff Meldrum and those sort of folks with high credentials. And believe it or not, there's more than just Jeff that are interested in this, but they can't really jump into something like that, and due to their capacity and where they work. But there's a lot of them that would jump on this in a heartbeat. And that's what it was going to take. So we go out, we do the legwork, we get the evidence, and we bring that to the scientists. Right. And they put their skills to work. I mean, we can be, what do you call it? So amateur scientists in the field, which our team tries to do that. We try to follow what scientists needs, because a lot of times science isn't going to look at any kind of evidence whatsoever if you don't follow their standards of how to collect evidence and so forth. So, we had we had a tracking class done so we can track these creatures and get closer to them. Right. And we had a forensic class done. And now we're hopefully by the end of this month, we're going to have an arborist come in from the University of Florida and show us exactly the signs to look for tree formations, tree rot, and just different things that we may be looking in the field and saying, oh, that could be Sasquatch done that, or could be something natural. Right. Well, I kind of really want to know for sure. What I'm looking at is either Sasquatch done it, or this is something natural, or what have you. So, I called upon University of Florida, got a hold of a gentleman there. He's an arborist, and he said he would come out for free and show us some stuff. And he goes, I'd be interested to see what you guys found, and see what you're seeing. Right. And I said, okay, that'd be great. And so we're supposed to do that at the end of this month in April. So hopefully, if things go well, we'll be doing that. That's awesome, dude. Yeah. So do you think Sasquatch, Bigfoot, you think eventually it'll be identified and classified? And if you do, when do you think that'll happen? Like, oh gosh. If we're talking outside certain agencies, which is going to be my next question for you, by the way. Yeah, it would be known to the people that watch the TV shows. For those that know for sure in those agencies, they already know this stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I think it will. Just like they came out and said, now they're coming out and say, oh yeah, UFOs are real. Oh well. Yeah, well, thanks for joining the club. Everyone else knows that. And now you're confirming that, they do exist now. And so, but you think that'll happen with Bigfoot, that they'll just be like, oh, yeah, it exists. Yeah, I believe so. And I think, I don't know how laws, because it would be nice to protect these things. You don't need people going out and trying to kill them. I mean, they do live in family pods and units, and they are very family oriented, and they will protect their family at all costs. And we've heard reports of that, different parts of the country, that they will protect their family just like we would protect our family if someone was trying to harm them. So protecting them would be awesome if we can get something in legislation not just in Florida, but all over the country. That would be great. Because we are consuming a lot of property. I mean, we're, and just in Florida alone, we're killing the natural resources here. Is crazy.
Right.
But what was your next question about the so-called agencies?
Well, because I wonder, like, you it seems like you're getting close. You're also expanding your knowledge base, right? You're getting an arborist,
Yeah.
you're doing all these things. Have you faced any backlash or obstacles from any agencies that you feel like are trying to stop you from getting that information?
No, the thing with the Dogman thing, I wanted to pursue that, and that happened in Mayaca State Park, and the podcast I heard about this, and I actually wanted to go and check it out for myself, only because the other gentleman had a very, very good encounter with two Sasquatches, which is actually, they were out hog hunting with some dogs, and him and his buddy were together. And he saw a little one, a female one, up in a tree.
Wow.
He thought it was a bear, until he climbed up into the tree up and looked at this thing. I mean, within a foot.
No way. It was like right there.
Oh yeah, it was right there sitting in the tree. I mean, he's like, what is that? So he got up in the tree, and
thought it was a cub.
It was a female, and he said
he thought it was a cub because, I mean,
yeah, he thought it was like he didn't know what it was.
Bear. Why are you going to go for the,
But this thing was holding on to the limbs. He saw arms, he saw legs. He's like, what is that? So we wanted to get closer and see what it was. And he said it was a female for sure, because he said it had, the hair on it wasn't really as thick. So you can see kind of like through the hair. You saw female parts and all that. And so as he jumped back, he's like in awe, like, what the heck is this thing, And this is at night now. He's got flashlights and his buddy's holding the dogs, because the dogs wanting to jump on this thing, and tear it up, and he's holding off, the other guy's holding off the dogs. And so if you can picture in your mind, the guy over here, say to his right or left, he's holding off the dogs. This gentleman, the other gentleman's looking up in this tree at this thing. Well, in between the two gentlemen, this big mother Sasquatch walks right between the two guys. And this little one just kind of, as you would see an ape do in a zoo, just crawled right up on mama's shoulder, and she grabs it around around its waist, like we would hold a child. And he was saying that this thing just, breezed right in, and you can feel how heavy she was. I mean, she was every bit of 8 feet tall and about 4 feet wide. And so they're looking at this thing, and this thing's just standing there now, staring at them. And his buddy's like, "Hey man, do you see this? Do you see this?" He goes, "Yeah, man, I'm looking right at it. Aren't you?" And he turns to, he goes, "No, I'm looking at that one." And there was a male behind this dude that was holding the dogs, and this thing was on all fours down the ground, and it was growling. I mean, it was like that real deep growl,
right?
And that was that infrasound stuff that he was projecting, and you can feel it going through their bodies. And he was like, "What the heck, man?" And while it was doing that growl type of sound, the female and the little one walked off. So when the guy turned around, was looking for her, she was already gone.
Wow.
And then the big one stood up, and he said, when that thing stood up, that big guy stood up, he was about 9 to 10 feet tall. And he had like 4 foot wide shoulders, and just built. I mean, he put Arnold Schwarzenegger to shame back in the day. He said this thing was massive. And this is in Florida. These are so, this is in the state of Florida, and so-called the skunk apes aren't supposed to get but 6.5 feet tall down there.
I mean, I heard that for so many years until your show with on that Sasquatch Odyssey when you said that. No, that's a myth.
Yeah. When you do the measurements on the prints that we've gotten down here, if you do the math on it, especially the 18-inch tracks that we found, there was a 19-inch track pulled out of Green Swamp, which is even a little bit bigger. So that's about a 9 foot, between 9.5 foot tall. So, that should tell you how big these things can get down here.
Man, Shaq, I think is what, 13 inches?
13, but the width of his foot isn't as big as these things.
Right.
He may have the length on it, but you don't have the width on it. That's the difference between Sasquatch and humans, is the width of their foot and of course the weight.
And the mid-tarsal break, right? That's one of the things.
Right. Yeah. The mid-tarsal break, in which, I've seen pictures of prints where these, where prints were like dug into a side of a ditch, and where they casted the print. It looked weird because it looked like you saw the heel, and then there was into the ditch was a hole. And then when you take the casting out, you can see the toes of this thing, and you can actually see where this thing hinges, the mid-tarsal break hinges. So if you equate that with them climbing trees, which they do, or getting on all fours and running like a banshee through the woods, that mid-tarsal break comes in handy because it's digging in.
Right.
It's digging in, and they're able to run as fast as on all fours than they are on two legs.
Man, that's amazing, man. So, David, what's in the future for you and your team? Tell us what's going to be happening in the next months, years.
Oh, gosh. Well, for me, I've had, family issues, with my wife. Unfortunately, she has epilepsy. She's had epilepsy diagnosed for 15 years. It's gotten worse over the past 6 years or so. So we've been dealing with trying to get that squared away and trying to get that fixed, working with Mayo and other neurologists and so forth. So it's been pretty rough for me getting out in the field. Actually, I haven't been out in the field like I would like to in a couple of years because I'm primary care for her, and so taking care of her and working at the same time.
That's your priority, yeah.
It's we always say it's family first, man. Family first. And but my teammates, they're getting out there, they're doing their thing, when they can. And that's all I ask, if they can do it, I know family comes first. Exactly, get out there, take care of your families first, and then, we'll get into this more when we can. But between conferences, I was able to actually do the conference here in Lakeland, the past two conferences, and the next one will be coming up in 23 here in Lakeland. So
what is it called? What is it called?
It's called the Great Florida Bigfoot Conference.
Oh my God, I didn't even know that existed.
Oh yeah. We had Cliff and Bobo, the very first
really
one. Yeah. Cliff and Bobo, that's the one I spoke at. And then the last one was last year, or where am I at? 22 this year, in January. I did I had a little spot on the conference there, or question and answer type of thing, which was awesome. I mean, the guys, Nikki and Martin that put on this conference, they do amazing work. I mean, they're awesome. They do one in Gatlinburg as well, a Bigfoot one in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. That's where they're from, in Tennessee. But amazing couple to work with, and people were always asking me, hey, we need to get a good conference down here in Florida, because no one's done one, no one has a conference. And one of the reasons I went out to the International Bigfoot Conference, number one, was to see Bob Gimlin, and then to go talk to Russell Accord, because he put on the one out up there in Washington. And so I learned a lot of information on how much money it takes to put on a conference like that size. There's a lot involved, and kudos to Nikki and Marty for putting this one on in Florida, because I was I was like, there's no way I can do it. There's no way. I mean, there's too much involved. And luckily, Nikki, Martin's girlfriend, I guess their girlfriend and boyfriend, that's her business. She does conferences and stuff. So, and Martin does all the promos together and everything. So, great, awesome couple. And I couldn't thank him even more, because I was like, yes, we're finally going to get a conference here in Florida. And he also talked to Ken Gerhardt and Lyle Blackburn, and at a conference up there, right. And I think in Tennessee, because he was looking to maybe have one in Florida. And both of them said, hey, you need to talk to Dave down here. He says they're a legit group, and he goes, yeah, talk to Dave and get in contact with him, because he would love to have a conference down here and get one going. So, hey, it just started in. They have two, and it's going to be an annual event. So, next year, I'm not sure exactly when the date will be for 2023, but right. That'll probably soon come out. Maybe they may start gearing that up, hopefully this summer, for plans on that one. So
I'll look that up.
Yeah, if you look it up, man, come on out to it. It's
awesome. I would love to, man. I would love to. So any plans on a book, documentary?
People ask me if I ever thought about writing a book, and I'm like, you know what? There's so much information out there already. I would just be kind of like trying to invent the wheel again,
nobody really does Florida though. They do normally Pacific Northwest, or they do general Bigfoot stuff.
Yeah,
Florida, I feel, is an animal of itself, like its own animal, so to speak.
There's a couple of them books out there on Florida, but like I said, these creatures are no different from Florida to Washington State. I mean, the only thing different is the terrain. But they all do the same exact things. So writing a book about these things doing the same exact things is kind of, to me, I think it'd be redundant, other than getting my name in print somewhere. I'm like, okay, I'd rather have my name in, maybe in a a journal or something like that, or something small on a smaller scale. Blurb. Yeah, a little blurb or something like that, or maybe someone can do a book on me. I don't know. But all of it takes time, and and writing a book, I know and I'm too anal retentive, because it would probably take me 10 years to write one book, probably, because I'd have to get everything just right. But I don't know. It's something that I've tossed around with just a little bit, but maybe one day.
All right. Well, Dave Sidoti, the man, you're a gentleman. Thank you so much. I learned a lot, man. I mean, you have a breadth of knowledge. And I'm always looking out into the woods, whenever I'm driving or my wife's driving, and I'm always thinking, like, is there something in there? But after this interview, I'm like, yeah, there's probably something in there.
Well, do you get out in the woods at all, or do any?
I don't get out in the woods. I just drive, man. I look into those things. But maybe one day I'll go with you. I don't know. Maybe I'll get the balls to actually go out there and try to see if something happens,
Yeah, we like having skeptics come out there, or newbies that are just into it, want to learn, because that's what we do. We like to teach people how to do this stuff. People like, hey, I want to join your group and your team, and I want to learn more about this stuff. And we're like, yeah, man, that's boots on the ground. You get out there. I mean, we do a little bit, we can do a little bit of classroom stuff to get the ball rolling. But getting out there in the woods, getting boots on the ground, getting dirty. That's the way to experience it, really experience it. And, I encourage anybody, even yourself, if you guys want to know more about what we do and how we do it,
definitely.
Thing, reach out to us. Our website's out there, www.isrtusa.com, and you can hit me up on Facebook, if Facebook's still going to be around the next year or so, but
who knows? Right?
Who knows? But there's other platforms out there I may have to reach out to, because some platforms may not be around much longer. But reach out to us, man. We're open for anything. And there's no stupid question. Honestly,
Yes,
there's no stupid question. And if we can answer the best we can, we will.
Well, stay in touch and keep me updated on anything new and cool. All right, man? Because I think if anything's going to break, it's going to happen with individuals like yourself that are actually going out there and doing the work. So,
absolutely.
Again, thank you for your time, my man. I appreciate you.
Hey, you're very welcome.
All right, brother. See ya.
See ya.
All right.